This is a tutorial on how to rebuild a ProFlo 5000 by Pentair or Fleck. First thing you want to do is power down the unit and then remove the front cover. This is an older model. It's a ProFlo 5000 SE. The newer versions are the SXT. Now we're going to remove the back cover by taking out these two screws. This will also expose the motor. Now simply lift the rear cover off the back of the valve, and this will expose the piston guide screw. Remove that screw. Then we're going to remove the two screws that we'll show you here in just a second. This will allow the entire drivetrain powerhead assembly to be removed from the valve. Now the whole powerhead simply pulls up and forward in one motion. This will also expose two screws that were previously hidden underneath the powerhead. Remove those two screws and you'll notice there's a third one that's been exposed. Remove all three and that will release the upper piston cap. Once these three screws are removed, you're going to pull up on the piston assembly. The cap, the piston rod will all come out as one piece. You notice there a seal and spacer or two also came with it. That is normal. Considering that this valve has been in operation for nearly 14 years, the valve's in exceptional condition. The seal and spacers show virtually no wear. The piston also shows no wear. There's a little bit of white buildup inside. That is normal. The piston rod assembly also shows almost no wear at all. And we'll zoom in on this to show you a little better detail of that piston rod. The next part in rebuilding the valve is to continue tearing it down. Remove the seals and spacers, and considering that this valve has been in service for nearly 14 years, the seals and spacers are removing quite easily. If you'll notice, the lower spacer is the only one that's different on this valve. Now remove the brine valve and always replace the O-ring that's underneath the brine valve. We're going to start the valve rebuild by installing a new O-ring for the brine valve. Be sure to seat that in flat. I use a small screwdriver to make sure it's in there correctly. Then push in a new brine valve. Then we're going to start with the odd-shaped lower spacer, followed by a seal, then spacer, seal, spacer, and so on until you've rebuilt the innards of the valve. If you'll notice, the inlet of the valve on the left has quite a bit of discoloration on the plastic. That is normal for a valve that's been in operation for any length of time. The water coming out of the valve is out the right side of your screen. You'll notice that remains clean. Just kind of shows how well the water softener does maintain the quality of the water. A very important note while rebuilding any Fleck valve is to make sure that the seals are on the lands. That is a flat spot inside the valve. You need to look down inside the valve and make sure that those valves are fully seated in the land area. Now we're going to reinstall the piston assembly. Looking down from the top of the valve, you'll also find the date code stamped right into the valve. Push the piston down into place. It'll seat down, not quite fully. The valve actually compresses into place when you tighten up the three screws. That will compress the seal and spacer kit. Next, we're going to reinstall the power head. You need to take special note of the direction of the piston cam. You'll notice there's a small tab on it right there. That must face to the left. There's a piece on the valve body there. You'll notice that it cannot be installed if it is in backwards. You may need to adjust the piston up or down slightly to get it to seat correctly. Now reinstall your piston screw. And then you'll reinstall the two power head retaining screws. Now reinstall your back cover There are 2 screws that we removed earlier that hold this cover on. You might notice the hole in the back of the cover. That is a hole that was originally designed for the electromechanical version of this valve. That hole in the middle of the valve has not been used in many years. The next item to service on this valve is going to be the injector assembly. Remove the 2 screws. This will expose the injector screen and the injector assembly. Use a small screwdriver to pry out the injector assembly. It has a small notch on it for that purpose. The injector screen, as you can see, is very large, very easy to maintain and clean. Be sure to install a new O-ring on the injector cap when you reassemble this assembly. This is the drain line flow control assembly. It does have an O-ring that should be replaced when the valve is serviced. And this is the drain line flow control button. As you can see, a small screwdriver, and it's removed very easily. I'll give you a close-up view of this. The numbers on the button should always face towards the valve. The drain line flow control button pushes into the assembly, pops right into place. The O-ring, very easily removed, and it should be replaced. This is the flow straightener on the valve. Make sure it's pushed all the way in. This is the most common meter used on the 5000 SE or SXT. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope it was informative.